Hey, what's up everyone? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review we are looking at the SH Figuarts Injustice Batman figure. This is a figure I was pretty excited for. I think a lot of people out there are pretty excited for it, and this is really going to be kind of like a first impression slash review video, since I've just pretty much taken it out of the box and gathered the parts and just run through it real quick prior to the video. So a lot of what you're seeing is going to be what I'm seeing for the first time. Also, so this will be kind of interesting. You guys will hear what I have to think without having time to go over anything. So he's about 6.5 inches tall, so he's pretty well scaled with most 1/12 scale or 6-inch scaled figures. Probably slightly smaller, but not enough to really worry about. I think it'll probably work out okay, since Batman is supposed to be, I think, what, 6'2", so that'll work out just fine. He has a 3-part cape, which at first glance, and I think if I look into it a little bit more, I'm not a big fan of. I don't really care for the way they designed this too much. I know that the Play Arts designs for the articulated capes haven't always been the best, but I think something more along those lines would have been a little bit better. We'll get to that in a minute. Before we look at all of the figure, let's look at the accessories quickly. We have an alternate head. I didn't play the game all that much. I don't think this is in the game. It might be though. I don't remember anymore. Maybe it's new for the figure. Maybe it is in the game. Now I'm wondering. I don't know. Either way, it's really cool looking. I love this head sculpt. Paint job's good. Sculpt is good. It's pretty awesome. Okay, so we have an alternate head. We have the grapnel gun or grapple gun or whatever you want to call that, and he can hold it like with his fingers in his hands. He's got hands for it, so we can put that on there. That's not the one. Actually, I wonder how well he's gonna be able to hold that, since it's designed very straight like, so that hand isn't really meant for it, but maybe that's what we're gonna have to use to hold it. Let's see. This is clearly a trigger finger hand. It's a really big grip. Let's see what he can do here. It's gonna be tricky, really tricky to get that hand on there. Luckily the fingers are fairly soft. Wow, that's okay, so that's not gonna work very well. That's not good design at all. So that's a trigger finger hand for sure. This is, he's got 2 of these hands. Those are clearly for batarangs though, because they don't have the open pinky and ring finger. Okay, so he's got the trigger finger hand, those 2 hands, and these hands. So none of them hold this very well at all. That's pretty silly. That's really silly. Look how big that is. Whatever. Okay, so moving on, you can put the hook in like this. So that's kind of cool. It'll look nice. It would look nice anyway if you could hold the gun properly. And then you've also got the opened hook like this, which is on a bendable wire, which is pretty cool, I suppose. I don't know, this looks kind of goofy to me, that extra cone piece. Maybe it was like that in the game, I don't remember. But nice detailing in the gun, just a really fat grip, so you can't really hold it too well. So let's go through the hands quickly, just in case you didn't catch everything I was doing. He's got the 2 open hands like this, just for the style pose. Nice detailing on the hands. He's got these 2 hands, which are going to be for the batarangs, which I'll grab a batarang in just a minute. Really nice sculpt work on those. And then he has the trigger finger hand, which doesn't hold the accessory very well. And of course he's got the 2 fist hands, which are already on him. And he comes with 2 batarangs, which are nicely detailed. Nice little kind of ribbing going on in there. And they're fairly thick, maybe a bit too thick, but I think that's okay. They're fairly stiff plastic, so that's good. He can hold them that way. They do seem kind of big and bulky. I don't know, Bandai. I don't know. And he can hold them that way also, just not quite as well. But they do kind of wedge in. You just have to push them in underneath those bottom 2 fingers, and he can hold them. So I guess that'll work. Can you hold them any other way? Not really. Not without some finagling. It's going to be tricky to do. So that's it for the accessories. It's a little disappointing that he can't hold the grappling gun very well, and the batarangs are kind of clumsy, but that's okay. Let's keep going and see what we think. There are some die-cast parts on the figure. I believe the chest is, I think the leg armor is the thigh armor? I don't think that is. I think just the lower legs and the chest maybe. Maybe the belt, and then maybe these right here. I'm not certain, but I'm pretty sure these, the spikes are. They're very pointy, by the way, so definitely not for kids. Excuse me. So let's look at the cape before we go on to the figure. He has this hinged part here, which I'm not sure why they did that. I think it would have been much easier for them to make this whole cowl piece a soft piece. Then we wouldn't have to have these separate pieces here. We wouldn't have to have this ugly hinge here, and we wouldn't have to have this really awkward looking cut all the way across. They should have made a softer cowl piece that went all the way down, kind of like drooped over. That would have looked much better. Probably would have been a lot cheaper for them also, so I'm not sure what they were thinking about this hinge design that doesn't really serve a purpose. So let me pull the cape off so you can see how we're doing everything. It has a peg here. And that's a peg hole. That's the only thing that holds the cape on. So it does tend to come off fairly easily. It's just this peg right here, which is hinged, so you can lift the cape up if you want to. But since it's only on that one little peg, it's going to come loose the more you pose it. And then these pieces, they don't come connected in the box. You have to put them on, and they just peg onto those double pegs right there, kind of like a Lego system that just pegs in. So they have the hinge like this, then they have a hinge like this. So you can keep the cape collapsed, and that's what it's going to look like pretty much, which is okay, except it's kind of sticking out a lot. And it's just kind of a strange look, I think, because it's, like I said, it's just kind of perpetually windswept, and it looks a little bit weird instead of just hanging down. So that's a little strange to me. There is a little bit of a remedy to that. We'll get to that in a minute. Or you can bring these out a little bit if you want to put them in like a jumping pose. But the way they're sculpted, the way they have this concave cut right there, as soon as you bring them away from the main part of the cape, you're going to end up with some holes in it. So instead of having a nice overlapping piece and having them maybe tuck under the big cape, which I think would have been a perfect idea, have these go underneath this and have a circular piece on either end, so that when you went out like this part was filled in by the extra cape. Now you can't really use this articulation at all because you have to keep it like that in order to keep it from looking junky. So that's just a strange design, and to have these pieces on the outside of this piece is a little bit strange to me as well. I'm guessing they did that for the sake of not having all this hinge work on the inside even more, so that they could keep it somewhat condensed. But it doesn't seem to be a good design. I'm not sure what they were going for with it. It doesn't quite work. It is a hard plastic too, which is also kind of strange. It's actually very strange. You would think it would be better to have a softer plastic, but it's not. It has some nice blue shading on it at least though, so that's kind of good. It's a little haphazard though, like this right here is really blue and then not so much over here. I don't know. I'm not digging this figure all that much. So anyway, what I was saying about the cape is if you don't want to have all this extra stuff going on, you can pop these off. Hopefully they don't break. In fact, what I'm going to do is grab my trusty knife and pry them off just a little bit from underneath because I don't want to break those hinges. That's much better, I think. So you might want to do that yourself. Be careful if you're going to use a knife, especially if you're a little young person out there. You don't want to be playing with knives. No little kids playing with knives. That's bad. Come on. Doesn't seem to be a good design for a few reasons. Now we can't even get them apart. There we go. Alright. So you can put the cape on just like this alone. And I don't know if it's really meant to be put on just like that alone because you have these goofy shoulder pieces that don't look great. But from the front, it does give him just that more kind of casual cape look, which isn't horrible. I don't mind it. But then we do have this goofy shoulder design instead of having them come down and then kind of like teardrop in. I think that would have looked much better. And it's just, I don't know, it's just not well implemented, I think. It's very disappointing. We're going to leave the cape off for now. You'll be able to see more of the cape in the photos at the end of the video. So for now, we're just going to look at the Batman figure himself. So the head, as you saw, is interchangeable. So he's got a double ball peg right here. Doesn't have a whole lot of range of motion in that ball peg. Just a little bit, which is kind of strange. And the way the neck is sculpted, The way the head is sculpted, we don't get really any, I mean, we get some, I shouldn't say we don't get any. We get very little articulation out of the head to neck. It's all coming out of the neck itself, which is okay, I guess, but the neck is really big, so when you move it around, it looks a little bit lumpy. So it would be nice to be able to move the head a little bit more on top of the neck, but it's very limited. So it's a little strange again, the way they did that. I'm not sure what they were going for. Very, very limited. The head sculpt is okay. It looks pretty good, I think. I don't really like the paint job on the eyes. It's just the little white spots with black pupils, which isn't supposed to be the case. He's supposed to have regular, normal pupils. So just the little black dots. Looks a little weird, plus they're always at the very top, so you have to lean his head forward so that it looks like he's actually looking straight. And then the paint on the face is okay. It's just not, I don't know, this figure just seems kind of rushed. And I guess it did have kind of a fast production period, but still, I don't know, it's lacking something. I can't quite put my finger on it, but so far I'm not thoroughly impressed. For the shoulders, we have a hinge for the shoulder armor. You can see that hinge right in there, so that's going to give the shoulder armor its individual hinge, but that is connected to the same joint that the shoulder itself is connected to, so it's not going to really serve much of a purpose. You might as well just leave it on, lift it up a little bit to get that bicep armor under there. But that's as high as you can raise the shoulder anyway, because of the way this is sculpted. When you raise the arm, that's as far as it goes. So you can't raise the arm any higher than that. About 45, a little more, I guess. But that's it. You do get a butterfly joint that brings the arm forward, so that's kind of good. That's kind of new also. At least I haven't seen it on a Figuarts figure that I can recall. So you can bring the arm around pretty well, so that's nice. But we still have a huge lack of articulation in that shoulder. It's pretty disappointing. And of course we have the ball peg that connects the shoulder to the body, which essentially just gives us this rotation here. We have a bicep swivel going all the way around, no problem there. Double jointed elbow, not the greatest range of motion, but it is there. We have a swivel here that allows us to rotate this forearm all the way around. So you can leave these spikes down if you want to, but I'm pretty sure they're supposed to go off to the side, if I remember correctly. Then we have the standard ball hinge for the wrist. So that'll swivel on both ends and it's hinged. It's not ratcheted, it's just hinged. The hands seem a little bit small to me. Somebody mentioned that to me earlier today. I was talking to him, he got his figure yesterday, and I didn't think it looked so bad in the pictures, but the hands, at least the fist hands, look pretty darn small. Let's pop one off. Be careful with that. Look at that. That's a risky ball peg. That's awfully stiff, awfully tight joint there. Be very careful when you're swapping these hands out. If there's one thing I like about the Figma joints that come apart pretty easily, is that you don't have to worry about breaking wrist joints. So the open hands look a little bit bigger, definitely. I think they might have balled the fists up a little bit too much. But if you give them an open hand and then throw a batarang in there, I don't think the small hands issue is going to be a huge issue. I think you'll be just fine with that. It looks pretty cool like that already. So that shouldn't be too big of a deal to have the tiny hands. For the torso articulation, it's, should I pull on it and see? Oh, I'm glad I didn't. It looks like it's actually a hinge in there. It doesn't, it moves a little bit, so maybe it's a hinge with a ball peg. That's what I'm guessing. I think it's a hinge that allows him to go like this. And I haven't obviously taken it apart. I just kind of peeked in there. And it feels like a hinge to go front and back for the ab crunch, which works all right. It doesn't go very far forward. Excuse me. It doesn't go very far forward. It does go pretty far back. And then we have just a little bit of a side-to-side crunch, which I'm guessing is a ball peg, which also provides us with this diaphragm type swivel up here, which is okay. I feel like his chest armor is a little bit small. It seems like his lower torso, his crotch area, is really big in comparison to his chest, his upper torso. I'm not sure. Something looks a little bit off to me there. I'm not sure what's going on there. And then if there is a waist, it feels like another ball peg for the lower torso where it connects. So you can rock side to side down there, front to back a little bit, and you can rotate there as well. The belt, pretty sure the belt's die cast, at least the front part is. The belt is connected back here, which is pretty strange. I don't know why they would do that. It would seem to be much more beneficial to let the belt just float to hide the articulation better, but as it is, the belt is connected and there's a pretty decent gap. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to tell. You can see right in there. Well, you can't probably see it because of the lighting, but you can if I do this. That's open, and in person you can see right into his guts. There, you can see it a little bit now when I lift the belt up, but that's there permanently because of the way the belt is connected. That's not good. More poor design, I guess. I don't know what else to call it. So he's got the standard hinged ball pegs for the hips, which let the legs drop down and give you pretty decent range of motion, but he has a really big crotch, and the way the hips have to tuck in, if you want to put them all the way up, the legs have to be like that. You can't bring them straight down unless you undo the hinge. I mean, you can kind of work it, but then he's going to have that gap there. So that's another strange choice, to have the legs be like that when you don't want to drop them down. He's got a really big butt too. He's almost got a diaper thing going on. I'm not sure what they were doing here, but it looks not right. It's very disappointing, really. I had this guy pegged to be on the top 10 list. Doesn't look like he's going to make it now, though. So ball peg for the hip. That'll give us this motion here. Then, of course, we can swivel around that. But they gave it a pretty good range of motion for just that peg, so the swivel is kind of redundant. Doesn't get much done, which is fine. I mean, you don't need it. It doesn't really hurt anything. So a good range of motion for the hips, just not the best design for tucking them in there. Double jointed knees, decent design. Could go farther, except it's designed in a way that it can't go farther. At least mine don't. Neither one of them can go any farther than that. So even though there's much more room there, you can't do it. And I suppose that's okay. I mean, we don't need to go any farther, but Batman's fairly agile, fairly athletic, so it'd be nice to be able to utilize the articulation a little bit more. So again, it's just kind of disappointing. He's got this semi-floating ankle guard here that's connected in the back to the top of the leg. Now, to me, that's a little bit strange. I think it should be connected to the foot, probably. That way, when you move the foot, it goes with the foot and fills in the joint. But having it connected to the top of the leg really accomplishes nothing. That makes it actually kind of useless because it might as well have just been sculpted on. Having it connected to the leg means it doesn't do its job. So that's another strange thing. We get a rotation in there, which is actually up in the joint. Hopefully you can see that. So that'll rotate there, and there's also a hinge up top that lets you do that. Pretty limited though. And then we have a fairly obvious ankle rocker. You can rock it to the outside a little bit, but you can rock it to the inside a lot, which is a really good design. I like that you can do that. It's about 45-degree bend, but like I said, that guard just doesn't cover the ankle the way it should because they glued it in on the top part instead of on the bottom part. So it's another strange thing. A lot of strange things going on here. I have to say it's disappointing because I wanted this figure to be really, really good, and not just for my sake, but for the sake of the line. You know, if we can get more imports of domestic characters like Batman, Superman, even Marvel stuff maybe, that would be great. But it seems like this is a not a good first showing, I think. It's not bad by any means. Obviously the figure's okay, but there's a lot of little things that are just strange. Okay, anyway, let's get back to it. He's got a toe joint, which is done pretty well. It's a little awkward, though, the way the hinge, it works well. It gives him good hinge, but then it kind of just extends the foot in a weird way. Looks a little strange. So again, more strangeness. I don't get it. I'm confused by this figure. And once you get it posed, you can make it look pretty cool, but there's so many weird things in the design that you have to really work for it, and I don't get that. It seems like I don't know. It seems like they had maybe two different teams working on this figure, and they didn't communicate well or something. Just it's something not quite right, and maybe you guys aren't going to see it. Maybe I'm just jaded in my reviews, and I mean I have to point things out. Obviously, that's the whole point of a review. But I don't know. It's just something's not quite right here. So whatever, I guess that's it. It's a decent figure. It's not bad by any means. It's just a lot of strange things that, I don't know, maybe you will, maybe you won't notice. But stay tuned, I'll post some pictures at the end, even though this is a long video. And make sure you subscribe to the channel, guys, so you can see my upcoming figure reviews, custom figures, and other fun stuff. And in the meantime, keep collecting.